When you're building a custom subwoofer enclosure, amplifier rack, or custom speaker adapters, sometimes the smallest little tricks and knowledge can make the biggest difference for getting an amazing result in a timely manner. I'm Mark, welcome to Car Audio Fabrication, and in this video I want to go through 10 of my favorite car audio build hacks, and don't worry, we're even going to be getting out the duct tape. First off, for custom car audio, we're going to be cutting a ton of circles all the time for our different speakers, tweeters, subwoofers, etc. So we need a way to be able to draw circles perfectly. What I have here is just a simple piece of cardboard. This is like cardboard that you would get from a cereal box. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut myself a straight strip. So we've got our strip made. That was simple enough. Now let's say that we want to make a cutout hole that is 6 inches in diameter, perfectly centered on this board. First off, rather than taking a measurement and dividing in half to find the exact center of this, a quick little trick we can do is we can just draw a little line in the center from corner to corner. By doing this, we know that where those lines intersect is the exact center of this board. Next, I'm going to take a push pin and I'm going to push it through our cardboard piece that we made and make a hole, and I'm going to pull it back out. And now what I need to do, whatever our cutout hole size needs to be, I'm going to do half of that as the radius. So let's say that we want a 6-inch cutout hole. So half of 6 is 3 inches. So I'm going to measure it from that hole that I made with the push pin. And where I marked that little pencil mark, I'll make another hole. I'll take the push pin and push it into that X mark that we created earlier, pencil lead in the first hole, and quickly and easily draw a perfect circle. Now we could use a large drill bit and drill a starter hole on the inside here, and then use a jigsaw to cut around on that line, giving us our cutout. Now build hack number 2, imagine if we did a similar technique here, but instead used a router to actually cut out that hole. The way we could do this is instead of making this out of cardboard, we would make this out of a stronger material, maybe like a piece of wood, and then we would attach the wood to the router base using some of the factory screw locations. We would cut out an oversized hole that will allow the router bit to travel through it. So the router bit would basically be where our pencil lead is from before. And then on that piece of wood, rather than using a push pin, we could use something a little bit more robust, like a nail or a screw, to hold the board in place while we turn the router around to make that cutout. The one thing to definitely consider though, if you are doing that build hack with the router, is make sure that you account for the offset of the router bit. A router bit obviously has a thickness to it. In this case, this is a 1/4 inch diameter bit. So if I'm doing an inside cutout hole, I'm going to want to make sure that I offset 1/8 of an inch from the center point to the inside here so that I have that cutout hole diameter what I want it to be. And the same thing if you were trying to create a hole where you're going to keep this inside dimension, in that case you would want to offset 1/8 of an inch outside. For build hack number 3, I call this the equal line distribution hack. Imagine, if you will, if this is the edge of a subwoofer box and we're looking to evenly distribute some screws so that they all have the same spacing between them. Anything in a build where you're looking to space things perfectly. Let's say that we want 10 screws evenly spaced. You might think, okay, I'm going to take this dimension here and I'm going to divide it by 10 and that's going to give my spacing. But there's a far easier way to do this rather than measuring out all those odd measurements. Instead, what we can do is we can keep this corner here on the edge of the piece and we're going to rotate this until our ruler hits, in this case, since we want 10 spacings, 11. The reason I've lined up with the 11 mark is you want to have an interval that's one more than the amount you plan to use. Because if you look at this, obviously if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 is going to be on the inside of this piece. Obviously you're not going to put a screw on the outside edge here or the starting edge. So that's why we do the 1 additional number. Once I have this lined up with the 11 perfectly on this edge, I'm going to draw a line. And then at each inch increment, I'm going to draw another mark. Just like that. Now I can take a square and line up with the edge there and then draw a line to each of those marks that I just created. And just like that, I now have the 10 individually perfectly spaced lines. And do keep in mind that you could do this with any number. It doesn't have to be the number 10. For build hack number 4, I have some template tape tricks that I want to show you guys. So if you're not familiar with what a template is, we will often use these in custom car audio to stick them to a piece of wood, and then we use a flush trim bit on the router in order to copy this profile to the piece of wood down below. This allows us to create some really cool geometry and some amazing looking builds. So throughout a build, if you're using templates, you're going to be using a lot of this stuff here. This is double-sided template tape. Now, first off, when you go to peel the backing paper off of this tape, there's a little bit of a trick you can do with your fingernail. You want to get right at the edge of the corner and just give it a little pull like that, and that will usually start the tape. Another trick that you can use to get that backing paper off is just take an Olfa knife and just kind of hook the corner of it like that and pull it up. I know this seems kind of silly and obvious, but it's the little things like this that when you have to do it a couple of thousand times throughout a build that save time. So let's get our piece stuck on here. I'm not really lining it up with any sort of precision. I just want to show you guys something. So after we cut this piece away, imagine that this piece here is gone. And obviously you're going to separate your template from the wood piece. So what usually ends up happening is the template tape sticks on the wood. Now I see this all the time. Guys come in here and they're trying to use their fingernail to pull it up and pull the tape off. But there's a much faster way to do this. Once you get one piece of tape, what you're going to do is stick it to the next piece of tape to pull it up. This allows you to pull the rest of the tape off very quickly. Again, I know it's something little here, but the time savings really add up. Now for this next build hack, I want to show you something really cool we can do with the mounting holes of different devices like an amplifier. But really quick, I do want to take a second to thank our monthly channel sponsor, Audio Control. This is the Audio Control D-5.1300, a 5-channel DSP built-in amplifier. This amp has 4 channels at 100 watts at 4 ohms with a 300 watt subwoofer channel, or if you go 2 ohms on the subwoofer channel, you can bump that up to 500 watts RMS. You'll notice a lack of dials and controls on this amplifier, and that's because, like I said, this is a DSP integrated amplifier, which means we'll connect to it with a computer or a mobile device, and we can fully tune this full system with the software. For each of those output channels, we can control time alignment, equalization, and crossovers, and even better yet, they also give us a pair of line outputs that we can also control in the software. That way we could send a DSP controlled signal to a separate amplifier. This amp is definitely worth taking a look at. I did a full review video about this here on the channel, and if you guys want to learn more, check out the links down in the video description. Now when we're mounting gear in a car audio build, whether it be an amplifier or even speakers and subwoofers, we know that we're obviously going to be using some sort of screw through the screw holes to hold it onto the board. Rather than just using a wood screw though, if you guys watch my channel, you know that I like to use these things here. These are threaded inserts, so we thread this into the wood one time, and then we use a machine screw in order to screw down inside of this. And the advantage of using the threaded inserts is we can take our components on and off multiple times without worrying about that thread quality breaking down, because we're using metal threads. To get these to work properly though, we need to make sure that we perfectly line them up with the center of each hole. Now rather than spending a bunch of time measuring out the hole pattern, instead what we can do is we can put our piece of gear in place, and then we can use this tool here. This is a transfer punch. We pick the transfer punch that is the proper size for the hole, and then you can see that these have a little tip on them, so all we need to do is push that tip through the hole, and then we'll just give that a light little hit with a hammer, which will then transfer the exact center of that hole to our board. Another cool build hack tool to keep an eye out for is these guys here. This is a self-centering drill bit. So the way this works is you obviously load it up in a drill, and then you want to pick the drill bit that's the correct size for your application. But you can see this little collar here will kind of come up as you push down into the wood material. And what that does is it allows you to perfectly center a hole. Now for build hack number 6, this is a little bit more for you more advanced guys out there that are rocking a router table with a dust collection system. This is a cool tip that I picked up from Brian over at Mobile Solutions. A lot of times when you're using a really big router bit like this huge round over here, you end up with a lot of dust. Even if you have a really good dust collection system, it never fails that some of the dust tends to come off the router bit and kind of shoot in this direction. Imagine you have your workpiece over here on this side that you're rotating through the router bit. What you can do is just take a scrap piece of material and set it right here. And what happens is as that dust flies off the bit, it has a tendency to kind of hit this piece of material and then arc back in and go into your dust collection system. Again, even small things like this that are going to save you cleanup time are definitely valuable. And as a quick little shameless plug for Mobile Solutions, if you guys are looking for a more advanced option here, you can go with their dust shield, which has magnets embedded down into the base so that this is going to stay in place while you're using it. For our next build hack, I have another quick layout tip for you guys. Let's say that you have a curve like this here, but you want to offset that size slightly. This comes in handy for things like when you want to rough cut material and you want to make sure that you save a certain amount of thickness so that you don't accidentally come too close to the edge that you're going to clean up later with a router bit. This trick also comes in handy, like I said, when just doing layout work and trying to come up with different parallel lines that are going to follow each other. What you can do is use different size washers to draw an offset line. In fact, I keep several different size washers on hand because it's so easy to do this process with those different offsets. Just like that, perfect offset geometry for the cost of just a washer. Now for our next build hack, if we're going to be using wood screws along with a drill throughout a project, I definitely recommend that you guys get yourselves one of these. What this will allow you to do is you can kind of extend this shield out over the screw, and it's going to hold the screw in position as you sink it down into the material. Like I said earlier, I prefer not to use wood screws to hold subwoofers and speakers in, but if you are doing that, the other advantage of this is it makes it a lot less likely that your bit is going to slip off the head of the screw and potentially damage your speaker. Instead, it's going to stay nice inside of this collar as you sink that screw down in. Now for our next tip, we need to come over here to the table saw because I want to tell you guys about the perfect way to cut an angle. And no, it's not with using this miter gauge. First, we want to use a table saw and set our fence to a known value and cut a piece. And we're going to set that piece aside for later. Next, on the angled piece that we need to make for something like the side of a wedge subwoofer box, we're going to measure out our dimensions for that angle and draw the line exactly where we want the cut. We're then going to stick some double-sided template tape onto the piece that we want to keep, and remember that piece that we cut first on the table saw, we're going to stick that on top, lining up its edge to where we want the cut to be. Now, if we need to, we'll raise up the table saw blade, but keep in mind that we still have our fence set from where we made this cut earlier. So now it's going to perfectly cut along our drawn line. And you can't see it in this view, but there's a couple of pieces stuck on the back side of this part of the board here just to support it so that it doesn't fall off while we complete that cut. The advantage of doing the angled cut this way is you end up with that cut exactly where you want it to be, and oftentimes by using the miter gauge that comes with the table saw, you can't get nearly as accurate results. Now my friends, it wouldn't truly be a build hack video if we didn't bust out the duct tape. What are we going to use this for? Well, this comes in handy when we're working with pieces of acrylic throughout a build. Acrylic is always going to have this backing paper on it, and this piece here is just a piece of scrap from the inside of a project that I made previously. But I want to show you a little trick with this because usually getting the edge of this backing paper started is really hard to do. Even with your fingernail, it's hard to start to get that edge up there and to peel this off. But with duct tape, it's really easy. All we need to do is take a strip of duct tape and we're going to stick it to our material like this. And then once we start to peel it up, you can see that it naturally lifts that backing paper off with it. Again, I know this seems like such a silly little thing, but imagine if you had a piece that you laser cut and it had a bunch of different letters on it and you had to peel out all the individual backing paper from like the insides of O's and A's. That would take tons of time, whereas instead you could just apply a layer of the duct tape and you peel it off and it easily grabs those tiny little pieces. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What is a car audio build hack that you love to use? Let us know, and if you'd like to see full car audio build videos detailed step by step, be sure to check out the other videos here on my channel and subscribe. Next time you're looking for an all-in-one system amplifier, be sure to check out the Audio Control D-5.1300. A thanks to Audio Control for sponsoring this video, and a thank you to Jerry, William, and the rest of the Patreon membership team. And thank you guys for tuning in and watching.